Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the Philly Factor. I'm your host, Paul Pirello. Our next guest is no stranger to the program. Jim Rosen has been with us previously to talk about his book on Jack Klugman, the book on Quincy, M.E., Quincy Medical Examiner, television series. The other book that he was on to talk about a while ago was Philly Pop, Rock, Rhythm, and Blues. Today, he's here to talk to us about the Philadelphia Athletics. The one-hour documentary entitled The Philadelphia Athletics, 1901 to 1954, aired on PBS and Comcast Sportsnet. The documentary has been getting rave reviews online, like on Amazon, for its history of baseball here in Philadelphia, to being called a true work of art that all baseball fans, regardless of team affiliation, will enjoy. And Jim, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. We got to keep running this whole play till we get it right.
You're our first three-peat guest. You're the first person that's been back 3 times.
I feel honored.
Oh, and the chair is there for you, my friend.
Thank you.
Besides other things, Jim has written books. He's produced documentaries, also an actor. And so we're going to talk about this documentary. And as I said, whether you're a Philadelphia Phillies fan or a Philadelphia Athletics fan, this documentary truly gets to the heart of baseball history here in Philadelphia.
It does, really. They were here 54 years, and Connie Mack is a legendary manager. He's an icon. He really was an inimitable personality, and they had great success. You know, they had a lot of years where they didn't.
Right.
But they won, I believe, 9 American League pennants, 5 World Series, and it's amazing when you think of it that, you know, he was well into his 80s and still managing.
Wow, yeah. The funny thing is that a lot of people will think of Philadelphia baseball, and the first thing that comes to their mind, the Phillies.
Right.
They may not be aware of the fact that there was another team in town before the Phillies actually arrived.
Well, I'll tell you what the chronology is. There were some teams called the Philadelphia Athletics. They were like athletic clubs, and they called themselves the Philadelphia Athletics, that were in Philly in maybe the 1860s, the 1870s, but they weren't, you know, there was no American League then.
Sure.
I think they called it a national conference or something. Then they disbanded in 1876. The Phillies came in 1883, and then the Philadelphia Athletics came in 1901. What happened was there was a man named Bancroft Johnson, Ban Johnson, who was this gruff, tough, outspoken sports writer, and he was the head of the Western League.
Okay.
And he wanted to create a league here, a team here in Philadelphia, and create a league called an American League that would rival the National League. So that's how the Philadelphia Athletics came to be. They created the American League, and he picked Connie Mack, who had been a catcher and a manager previously, to come here and be the manager of the Philadelphia Athletics, and he owned 25% of the team.
Yeah. Connie Mack is one of those names synonymous with Philadelphia and Philadelphia baseball. And of course, the old Shibe Park was renamed Connie Mack Stadium.
Yeah.
And then the Phillies played there until they moved to Veterans Stadium.
Yeah.
And so was the city of Philadelphia then able to, in these early days, sustain 2 baseball franchises?
Well, yeah. The Phillies played at Baker Bowl at Broad and Lehigh. It was a small stadium. They played there until 1938, but they were not a good team. They were not a popular team. The Philadelphia Athletics were really the team. And when you think about it, they were in the American League. Phillies were in the National League. So Babe Ruth came to town. Lou Gehrig came to town. Ty Cobb came to Philly. You could go see him because they played the Philadelphia Athletics.
Yeah.
You know, they Philadelphia Phillies fans couldn't see that. And then eventually the Philadelphia Phillies left the Baker Bowl and leased Shibe Park. But the A's were really the team, you know? They had some lean years, which if you want we'll get into in between their first dynasty and their second dynasty. But then in the late 40s, they had a little bit of a renaissance for 3 years. But by then, the Phillies had started to blossom. And by 1950, when the A's had a dismal year, the Phillies were the whiz kids and won the National League pennant. So it swung the other way. But I think there was a year there, if I'm not mistaken, 1940, 1950, where both the A's and the Phillies drew huge
Really?
attendance crowds. Yeah, I'm talking well over 500,000.
Really?
I'm not sure of the figures, but 600 and some thousand, maybe even more.
Which is significant given the time, too. Today,
Yes.
you would say, look at Citizens Bank Park and look at what the Phillies have been able to do
Yeah.
at the new ballpark.
Yeah.
But given the time that we're talking about here,
Yeah.
that was a significant number.
It was, but ultimately, because 3-4 years later they left, their attendance started to dwindle, and it was proven that Philadelphia could not sustain, really, the fan base could not sustain two franchises. And in addition, Connie Mack's two older sons were running the team. I don't think that they were very good at it. They were frugal, and when you put all that together, that there was not a sufficient fan base, and the administration was not up to par, it just signaled the end of the A's, and the attendance dwindled. They had a dismal record. Connie Mack, of course, was replaced late 1950, and Jimmy Dykes, who had played for him, came in and managed for 3 years. And then Eddie Juice, God rest his soul, what a good man. He's in the documentary. He happened to be here and contributed along with Gus Zernial.
Sure.
And they're both gone now. He took over for the final year, and then this man, I think, Arnold Johnson, bought the franchise. It almost went to Crisconi Oldsmobile, who was
Really?
a dealership here in Philly.
Yeah.
Connie Mack Jr., he wanted to, I think, favored selling it to them, I think. But there was some issue about underfinancing, and finally it was persuaded that they go ahead and sell it to Johnson, who moved it to Kansas City.
Right.
And they were there until 1967. And then they moved to Oakland in 1968.
And the rest, they say, is history. And the whole story of Philadelphia athletics does get overshadowed, I guess, when you look at the Phillies here in town. Although they have quite the organization, and I guess the groundswell support of fans who are loyal to the A's. And we'll get into that, because I know there was. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought there was a location in the suburbs. There was sort of a museum dedicated to the A's.
In Hatboro, they had a store. The Philadelphia Athletics Historical Society had Ernie Montello managed it. A very good man. Worked very hard to make it work. And for many years, they had the store, and they sold A's memorabilia and T-shirts and caps and the books, not only on the A's but on the Phillies.
Sure.
They were very loyal to the Philadelphia and other sports as well. And in the back, they had a museum.
I see.
They had uniforms. They had the old turnstile from Shibe Park, Connie Mack Stadium.
How about that? Wow.
They had bats and some of the authentic jerseys, and they would screen the documentary there.
Yeah.
And it was a nice little store, but after a while, it just they could no longer sustain it because it was expensive to run. But for years, and now I mentioned before, now the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame has a room at Spike's Trophies, which is been in business since 1929.
Sure,
they have
yeah.
Trophies and awards and signages, and Keith Baldwin is in charge of that. They're on Grant Avenue in the Northeast, 2701. They have a huge room there, and it's the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame Preview Gallery. So the A's are in there, and they have some things on LaSalle. They have Joe Vonage, is it? The swimmer who won the 200-meter breaststroke, I think, in 1948, the gold medal winner. They have some things on him there, and Tom Gola. So they have some LaSalle people there. And they pay tribute to some of the different schools and professional organizations. And I think you can go there every Saturday.
About that.
And then I think by appointment during the week.
Yeah, I know ultimately they would like to have that Sports Hall of Fame in a a showcase in a museum somewhere to be built at a location to be determined. But I know they've been actively out there acquiring all of this memorabilia with the intent to open a museum, and it makes perfect sense given the rich history of sports here in Philadelphia. So what made you, and we talk about names, synonymous with Philadelphia sports, and of course your documentary is narrated by the great late Bill Campbell. Bill Campbell was such a part of the fabric of growing up listening to the radio or even television. Bill Campbell, up until recently, was even on the radio on KYW with sports commentary. He offers he's the talent that tells the story of the Philadelphia Athletics.
Yeah. Before I mention him, I think the man from LaSalle was Joe Vidor.
Right.
I think I mispronounced his last name.
Right.
I'm sorry about that. He was a prince of a man. He was very supportive of what I did. I remember when Tom Gola had his accident and we went to see him in the hospital in Center City, Bill and I, and we came out and I said, Bill, you want me to drive you home? He lived in Cherry Hill. He said, no, I'll take the train. And this iconic broadcaster just walked, see you later, Jim. Walked down the street, down into the stairway to take the subway to get to the train to go to Haddonfield. He was a terrific man. He did both documentaries.
Yep.
He did the Philly Hoops one I did, and then he did the Philadelphia Athletics. And he just was so knowledgeable and so professional, and he breathed sports. And he had this phrase whenever he would go off the air. He would say, "Good day, good sports."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and up until even offering the commentary on KYW, he would say that that's how he would always end his commentaries on KYW. Yeah. You mentioned the other documentary that you worked on, Philly Hoops, the birth of pro basketball in the city of Philadelphia, and of course you can't tell the story of Philadelphia basketball without talking about Wilt Chamberlain, who played with the Warriors, and that historic game in Lancaster, right, where he scored 100 points.
Yeah, he scored 100 points, and it's funny in the documentary. Harvey Pollack talks about how there was no way to really, no sign, so he scribbled 100 on a piece of paper, and he said, I flunked penmanship in grade school, but I did I did the best I could, and that's that sign that he holds up. But Harvey in that game was everything. He was performing 3 or 4 different functions and covering the game for 3 or 4 different papers because nobody thought anything of it. The Warriors are playing the Knicks in Hershey. Mm-hmm. Who cares, And it was an amazing night, and he was an amazing guy, Wilt Chamberlain. I was friends for many years. I still am with Timmy Brown, who played for the Philadelphia Eagles. We were both actors out in L.A. We studied with the same teacher, and he's a terrific guy. He's still living out there. And he was friendly with Wilt. Mm-hmm. So I had occasion to meet Wilt on several different occasions, and he just was a very nice man. He was very down to earth, and he loved people and very gregarious, and he was a great athlete.
Our sports heroes from this era that we're talking about, the Wilt Chamberlains, even the Connie Macks. I mean, they were on a different level, but yet they did not forget where they came from. I mean, and even to some degree, I remember growing up as a kid, Julius Erving being in a diner in South Philly, and they came into the diner after playing a game at the Spectrum at the time, and even before we referred to him as Dr. J, I mean, Julius Erving stopped and signed autographs. I probably have it somewhere on a napkin from the diner. I mean, that's what these guys did, and I'm saying many of them still do that today, but sometimes they're reluctant for whatever reason to mix and mingle with the fans outside of their respective venue.
I kind of learned this and observed this from spending the time out in L.A. as an actor in the TV and movie industry. I noticed with Jack Klugman and other actors that I worked with in shows that were notable. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just, there's things on their mind, or they're doing business, or it's just they're distracted, and people approaching them is even more of a distraction. Other times when they're not, when they're of clear mind and moving along, I think they're very happy to greet people and be engaged by fans, because without fans, you know, they wouldn't have the notoriety that they have.
Sure.
You know, but it's timing. You know that old saying, the secret of comedy is before you can finish, you cut off and say timing.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it is. And look, you know, as you said, a lot of times, you know, you know, they like to go out, they like to eat. They don't necessarily want to be signing autographs, and you got to respect that. I mean, you have to respect that. And I think sometimes in the haste to get that autograph or to meet that person, you don't necessarily pause and think, well, am I infringing on their quality time?
Yeah.
These two documentaries that you've worked on, I mean, these just doesn't happen overnight. So a lot of time and effort went into the documentary sports, Philly hoops, as well as on the history of the Philadelphia Athletics. I mean, how long did it take you? Let's talk about the athletics. I mean, how much time and effort goes into making a documentary like that?
I think I spent pretty much close to a year on both of them. I mean, 1 year for the Philly hoops, the Spas, and the Warriors, and another year for the Athletics, because you know you have to write it, you have to gather up all the photographs and information, and then write the narrative. Then you have to interview the people, and then you have to edit, and it takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time to do the research, and then interview the folks, and then put it all together. And because what you're doing is you're wearing three hats. You're writing, you're producing, and you're directing.
Sure.
And then even when you're with the editor, he's contributing his expertise, but you have a vision of how you want it to flow.
Sure.
So you're involved in that as well.
Yep. And you know, interviewing some of these people that you've included in both of these documentaries, I mean, you're fortunate enough to have some of these people from those eras, if you will, because look, with every passing day, there are fewer and fewer people that are around from the heyday of the Philadelphia Athletics and even the Warriors for that matter. I mean, you know, so how do you reach out to them, and are they agreeable to talk about this snapshot of time for them?
I think so. I think what I found is from doing all the books, the television books, the music book, this book, when you approach people that are older in their twilight years, the huge percentage is very willing to revisit the glory days. You know, when I did the Route 66 book, George Maharis has a terrific memory. He's in his 80s now, mid-80s, and he has a terrific memory. So the same thing with the line producer, Sam Matters. When I did the Athletics, you know, everybody in there, Paul Arizin and Tom Gola, God rest both their souls, they were terrific. They were very open and very willing to revisit the glory days, and very candid and very frank. Paul, you know, I shot the interview in his home with a background. He had like down the basement, he had like a little trophy case.
Right.
I shot, and then the same thing with Tom.
Yeah.
When I did the A's documentary with Joe Astroth, I shot in his living room, and he had a huge portrait of himself behind him. So, you know, when notable people in sports and entertainment are younger, they're busy and they have a lot of things going on, and you know, it's catching them at the right time. The older they get, the more time they have in their hands, and they're very happy to reminisce and go back, because, you know, I think invariably everybody has wonderful memories of their careers, and I just found it very easy to do. And then of course Eddie Joost and Gus Zernial in the A's documentary were here for a luncheon,
right?
And they were both terrific. And you know, I look back, as you say now, all these people are gone.
Yeah.
So it's sad in a way, but I'm very happy that I was able to experience them and spend time with them, and they all seem to like me and appreciate what I was trying to do to preserve this for history and educate the young people as well about the Philadelphia Athletics and the Philadelphia Warriors and the Spas, and so they were, you know, they were very receptive.
Yeah, and that was another question that I was going to ask you, is that you've given us, not only in these two documentaries, but even in the books that you've written about, you know, some would say the golden age of Hollywood and television for that matter. I mean, these are books that really capture the essence of what went into television production at that time. And we talk about the Quincy book only because we had you on to talk about that. I mean, how does it make you feel? I mean, it's got to be kind of gratifying that you've been able to capture in dealing with Quincy M.E. And Jack Klugman, who was a Philadelphia guy. I mean, you're literally leaving behind your own legacy in that you're able to capture the essence of that television series and in these two documentaries, giving us a little snapshot of Philadelphia sports, but otherwise might go overlooked. It may not be, as you said, with every passing day, the memory of the Philadelphia Athletics begins to fade a little bit. But you've left us now with something that is pretty much at the forefront of any sports fan's mind if they're looking into the history of Philadelphia baseball.
What was gratifying for me was Alpha Video picking up the rights to do both documentaries, doing a nice cover jacket, doing it, redoing it, and making it putting out a video with great quality, and people all over the country buying it and looking at the reviews on Amazon and you get some royalties, but that, it's just a great feeling of satisfaction. Yeah.
Sure.
The same thing with the television books, getting them into the UCLA Film and TV Library, getting them into the Southern California Motion Picture Arts and Science Arts Library, getting the music book into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I was going to mention that. Yeah.
That made me feel so good when and then the Philadelphia Library, buying 24 copies for 24 branches. It's validation, and yes, it's what you said. It now, Lee Andrews said this to me, probably one of the finest R&B singers ever to come out of Philadelphia, and now his son is big too, Roots, Questlove. He said, look, Jim, you've done something important here. You've documented it. Now it's in the library, so people won't forget our music history. And he was right. It's very gratifying when you meet young people that either got the book or can talk about American Bandstand and Lee Andrews and the Hearts and Danny and the Juniors and know about Bobby Rydell. And where is Bobby, by the way?
Yeah, he's not here today. Yeah.
Bobby, where are you when we need you? And Chubby Checker and Gamble and Huff and Tom Bell and Linda Creed and all these people. It's just amazing. It's, life is amazing when you think about all these people in the arts that have all this God-given talent and are able to, let it out, and all the people that benefit from it via watching them in a movie or a TV show or hearing their music or dancing to their music.
Sure.
It's a great thing.
It's funny because just the other day someone brought up there's a commercial that uses a Gamble and Huff song, For the Love of Money, which I think is also the theme song for Celebrity Apprentice. And
the OJs put that out.
Right? Yeah, right, exactly. And the first thing is they associate The Apprentice with the song, but they don't know that it was recorded here in Philadelphia at Gamble and Huff Studio on South Broad Street. And even there, the landscape is starting to change because they've taken down the iconic sign off the building, and the recording studios that are there. And I think the building is going to soon make way for some other type of development. But when you talk about these fleeting moments, I mean, they're a snapshot in time here in Philadelphia, but the legacy of Gamble and Huff's music will live on forever. People may not respect or understand where the song may have originated from, and they only associate it with the television show, but it was here in Philadelphia that song was born.
Money, 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 money.
Yeah.
What you said is really the essence of it. Time marches on, and lots of things happen, and there's lots of water under the bridge, and people forget because nowadays people's attention span is limited with all the things that we're bombarded with.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
With the social media, and it's amazing to me. So if you can leave some kind of record, be it a legacy or whatever you choose to call it, it's a wonderful thing,
So I know you're busy once again pursuing your acting career, but any other books, any other projects in the pipeline? I'm sure the whole acting end of things is going to occupy a lot of your time. But in the few minutes that we have left here, I know that you could go back and revisit and update some of the books. But anything new that we could expect from you?
No, I have a screenplay that I've written. It's with some producers in Canada. They've done television movies for some of the cable networks, and I'm hoping that something might happen with it, not necessarily as a TV movie, because I don't know that it's right for some of these networks, Lifetime and Hallmark. I don't know that it's right for them, but nowadays people are making low-budget films that never get theatrical exhibition. They're made, the money is raised, and instead of going out and getting them in the film festivals and getting distribution and getting them into the theaters, they're sold directly back to television. This project that I've done may be an example of that, but it would be shot as a low-budget film for $1 million. It's about a boy, a 20-year-old boy that has an illness, and he's in a small town, and it's about the problems that he has with the people there. But he's a terrific young man, and he's a gifted writer and sensitive, and it's really about understanding people that are different than you. It's entitled Butterfly, and we'll see. I've written it and rewritten it and listened to people that I think know what they're talking about and utilize their input. So I've done the hard part, but now I don't know if the harder part is getting it made. That seems to be, but at least I have something. And nowadays everything is predicated on the printed page. So.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to come back and talk about that if it sees the light of day, and I hope it does. From your mouth
to God's ear.
I hope it does. Our guest has been our good friend Jim Rosen, who is here talking about Philly hoops as well as the Philadelphia Athletics. And you could go online, Amazon.com. You could find the DVDs as well as Jim's books. And I want to thank you once again. Always a pleasure to have you here.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Until the next time, come back and see us again on The Philly Factor. My name is Paul Perillo.